Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for having me. Tom, Kim, thank you for the wonderful introduction and the opportunity to come down here in nice weather. So for those of you that are new to me, I actually started the VIVE business. There was me and two other people sitting in a room, and our CEO said, hey, I want to go into mixed reality, augmented reality, and I want you to go meet these guys over at Valve. And I want you to go learn what they're doing, and I want to build a partnership with them. And so we went and did that in the early stages of 2013, 2014, and we actually launched our first product in 2016. So all very exciting stuff. Some other notes about my background. I come from a long history of just technology, communications. I came out of Bell Labs, worked in AT&T operations. When I went to work for HTC, the first project they gave me was the first ever Android phone. So I've been working in smartphones well before they were called smartphones. I think they were called Windows mobile phones at those point, which is older than most of the people in the room. But other than that, I've been working around technology, innovative new technology. I like to call myself a 0 to 25 person, where I like to work on problems that are literally just concepts on a board, and then actually take them to market and see what the market can then do with it. So first things first, I was actually part of building the brand for the VIVE business. And for those of you that are thinking about starting your company, starting out something very purposeful, you have to think about why does that company exist. Cher, Wang, and I, we built smartphones together for a long time. And we really wanted the VIVE brand to be very purposeful, very purpose-driven. We wanted to make it sure that people understood why it existed. So the triangle actually has a definition. It stands for technology, imagination, and humanity. And so what we wanted to do was bring together really innovative technology. We wanted to create tools that would actually open up the imagination. And we wanted to bring a tool that would actually deliver value to humanity. And we wanted to open that up. So that was really the purpose and the preface of why the VIVE brand actually came about. We have a long history of making stuff, from smartphones, we actually made the first 4G LTE phone a year and a half before anybody else. I think everybody in this room is probably either using an Apple phone or an Android phone. Some of you are using Android phones. You got that green check, But anyway, there's a lot of technology out there that our company actually enabled for the rest of the industry to actually follow along. And we're doing that again with the VIVE business. And I'll get into some of the things that we're working on. But it's just in our DNA to kind of be at that edge of where the technology is going and why is it going there. So what is XR? What is extended reality? The good news is most of the people in the room actually know that. I'm not going to ask the hands up question because I think you all do understand that. But just a little bit about when we started the VIVE business in 2014 and 2015, everybody wanted to have that argument about what's going to be bigger, AR, VR, mixed reality. So much of what we've been doing for the last 8+ years or 10 years has actually been the progression to actually get to the realization of AR. We're starting to see AR glasses, some of you are wearing them in the room. Skip, got one on. But we actually have, this really good progression. We were working on 2013, we were working on augmented reality glasses. They didn't work so well then. Not only because the frame rate wasn't good, the content was not compelling, we weren't solving any problems, but the number one gap was we had no way to deliver the actual content in a meaningful way, fast enough that it would actually be compelling. I think the previous speaker brought up a great point. If you're not solving a problem, it's a pointless product. Kind of like 3D glasses for TV. You just said, hey, here's the same thing that you were doing before, but wear these while you do it. That's why that really basically failed. So when you do things that don't really compel people to do something in a new interactive way, it's really not going to go well. So we started with virtual reality, enclosing the user inside of that space, and then moving them towards that progression of mixed reality. And now we see a series of different headsets that do video reproduction or actual augmented reality pass-through. But the gap of delivering the content fast enough. We're talking about sub 10 millisecond round trip from a node 7 miles away to in front of your eyeball. Now, 8 years ago, we had about a 2-pound, 5-meter cable hanging off of a PC, and we said, it's going to be a while before we can do this wirelessly. But we can actually do this thing wirelessly now, and that's where we're actually headed. Because what we're actually doing is we're going to virtualize so much of what was in these goggles, these big, heavy goggles that we have today, whether you are a Meta headset or a Pico headset, an HTC VIVE headset. These are pretty robust products that we ask people to wear on their face. That's a huge hurdle, right? We really don't want to go beyond this in terms of hurdles of things that we want to wear on our face in order to do interactive things. We know this, but we're actually going to get there, and I'm going to show you how. A couple of other things, though, that we thought about was reimagining the way we work. We wanted to create solutions ahead of time now with mixed reality glasses, with virtual reality glasses. We wanted to create training simulations. I think overwhelmingly, if you're thinking about creating an XR company today and you want a real use case, if there's a serial training use case, whether you're kitchen training, whether you are lethality training for military, whether you're a nurse, whether you're a doctor, you can actually do it much more effectively. The classroom, this is a great tool in the classroom. It doesn't replace the teacher, but it is a very, very effective tool. We've actually been able to do remote collaboration, cooperative sessions where you have multiple users, and then your design and visualization. Now, the cooperative side of things, this is really getting quite expansive, and I'm really excited about how this is going because we're getting to a point now where 8 years ago, we talked about having one user with one PC in one room, and now we're at a point where we actually have hundreds of users inside of a space, and whether they're connected via Wi-Fi connection or in the future, what we're doing with telco networks and actually connecting hundreds of headsets and thousands of headsets at a time. So some of the other things that we see that are transforming industries today and how it's actually affecting today, government, military. This is a very, very large area of investment in growth. This could be used for simulation training for soldiers, could be used for operations training. This is a heavy area. The US government and the DoD is actually heavily spending in training, simulation, innovation, and design. It's also being used in field hospitals. It's being used as a healthcare device. And it's very, very effective. Healthcare is another high growth area. So when I look at my company and how is my company growing, since day one, we gave 70% of the headsets to game developers. 30% in 2015 went to enterprise and commercial use cases. This was always the goal for us, was to grow the commercial applications. Healthcare was one of our target areas. Government, military, healthcare, two of the fastest growing verticals right now for XR adoption. So if you're thinking about building a company, you're thinking about who's putting money into it, where are they making those investments, these are areas of high growth. Location-based entertainment, this is arcades. Now what I will tell you about arcades and what is amazing about them is not only are they growing in terms of number of users, expansion around the world globally, it is the test bed and innovation place where we actually test out innovations, which then go into the classroom, which then go into the corporate environment, which then go into the healthcare environment. So when we think about multi-user, highly interactive, people running around and hopefully not getting sick, people running around, hopefully not running into each other or objects, this is a great way to actually test out a lot of technology and then move it into actual commercial application. Finance, 3D modeling of data. When we look at how is artificial intelligence coming in, there's an amazing company called Flow Immersive. They're been around for 15, 20 years, but they were a data company, a data visualization company, a data intensive AI company in the early stages of AI. And now what you can do is you can actually use the headset to talk to the data. So now you're talking to the data in a way that you're saying, show me the application, show me the perspective of these 5 companies over this years, and then show me their performance and revenue. And instead of an analyst or an analyst team taking 3 to 4 weeks to put together that perspective. It's being done in about 3 minutes. And so that is functionally game-changing for a lot of financial institutions. So heavy industry. If you're not paying attention to what's actually happening in the world today, we're in an energy war, okay? And there is going to be massive investment over the next 2 years in this country into energy and energy creation. So companies like GE Hitachi, what they're doing with their nuclear innovation, they're training all of their nuclear rod cleansing applications. There was one, I'm going to steal some of John Cunningham's speech. Since he's not here, I can steal from him. But anyway, John actually developed a solution with Veru where they actually have a platform for training nuclear engineers. There was only one training center for this one training experience in Southern California. And now they've been able to replicate that training center in other countries and other parts of the world. And actually, they've quadrupled the throughput and number of people that they can train for it. So in terms of where that investment is, where it's going, who's working on it, energy, heavy industry, manufacturing, this is a no-brainer for so many people. Bell Helicopter designed a new prototype helicopter in 6 months. Anyone want to guess how fast they used to do it before that? Come on, give me one guess. 5 years? Yeah, that's about right. They saved over $100 million by taking a pilot and putting him in a seat and designing a helicopter around him. So they wasted no material, they wasted no time, and they were actually able to produce a prototype in a quarter of the time. So it's pretty phenomenal. So some of the things that we have seen, okay? Ford has achieved a 70% decrease in employee injuries with VR training. That's significant. Now, if you want to learn about white papers, you can go on our website. We have tons of white papers to download about different efficiencies that you can gain and return on investment. But when you think about effectiveness of VR training, you're thinking about kinesthetic learning, right? And whether you have that teacher there, or whether you have that, we're going outside the classroom again, where people like me learn really well. But you have a 750% increase in knowledge retention. Now that doesn't account for knowledge retention over time, because over 3 months, over 6 months, a lot of that knowledge goes away if you're not using it regularly. So what we have found was reading retention is about 15%, lecture retention 5%. So I really am trying to be compelling here, but you're only going to retain about 5% of what I say. So, at the end of the day, we do see real efficiencies. Walmart achieved a 96% reduction in training session durations. So this means you're getting through the training faster, you're getting through the training retention better, and they're making less mistakes. Another really compelling one was Yale's medical school. The doctors that trained on gallbladder removal, which is a laparoscopic procedure with about 5 different incisions, they, on average, those students made 6 times fewer errors and got through their surgeries 29% faster. So patients are under less time under anesthesia, recoveries are better, less mistakes for the patients. I would like that doctor to take out my gallbladder. So, also thinking about return on investment, 92% of financial organizations have a positive ROI within 2 years. 84% of financial firms saw an improvement in employee skills. So to your skills training, keep going, because you're leading probably that metric for us, so thank you for doing that. In terms of adoption, 86% of healthcare respondents expect their organizations to have XR training within the next couple of years. When I talk to the DoD, they expect within the next 2 years to be at 85% training using XR headsets. We're working on solutions where every incoming soldier, every incoming enlisted person will not only be deployed their materials and their clothes, they will be deployed an XR headset. So when you're thinking about career, when you're thinking about where in the ecosystem do you want to participate, there is a lot of places, okay? There is the hardware. There is the security of the hardware. If you're thinking about building a solution for a corporate environment, your security better be robust, okay? This is not the consumer market, and you have to build that in. How are you going to stream it? How are you going to get it to that headset? Are you going to use full body tracking? Do you want to work on accessories and peripherals? Do you want to work on portability and delivery of content? Think about the arc of actually how you actually deliver XR. It's a very complicated arc. You know, the endpoint of when you see it in front of your eye is that one endpoint, but there's an entire ecosystem that gets it to that point. So virtual production, do you want to be on the production side? Device management, do you want to manage this equipment? It sounds really boring. Managing all the IT equipment for a school, very complex, very profitable. Not a lot of companies are managing a lot of XR headsets and the deployment of them into a wide variety of use cases. There's not a lot out there, so there's a lot of great opportunity. Do you want to be a platform player? Do you want to be a store player? Do you want to actually work on support for these headsets? There is a complete vacuum of zero support for companies that actually need to support these products once they deploy thousands of them at a time to their end users. So, and then there's working with the content developer and partners. Our company does all of these things at some scale and some volume, but when you're thinking about what do you want to do when you leave the university? Where do you want to go? There's an ecosystem inside of this XR market of where you can play and what you can work on. Thinking about hardware, our company, we have several different products on the core headsets. We have things like the VIVE Focus Vision. We just launched this product. This product has actually been deployed into a lot of enterprise and high robust use cases. A lot of arcades use it, a lot of our classrooms use it. The United States Marines are using it, and they are beating the living poop out of it. So it's a very robust product. But this headset has also been deployed to the front lines in the Ukraine war. We're using it for actual PTSD recovery and healthcare solutions inside forward hospitals. So when you think about, you know, back to your brand and why do you exist, and what are the products and the solutions that you focus on, what do you work on, these are the types of solutions and the products that we work on, and that's why we're actually developing them. We've also developed the VIVE Focus 3. This was a previous product predecessor to the Focus Vision. That is an actual astronaut last year from the European Space Agency, Commander Mogensen, that actually used that headset in the space station. He used it to decompress as a, decompress from the strains of being in the space station. It's very noisy up there, it smells like metal, and there's about an inch between you and certain death. So it can be very stressful. He used the product to actually go back to Earth, come back to Earth, and actually get centered and to get into a good frame of mind. We actually came up with a solution for this headset to put an anchor on the wrist so that the headset would not float away from the user while it was floating around the Earth. So for all of you that don't know, your phones, your headsets, anything that is technology on your body uses gravity in a very purposeful way. We also have the VIVE XR Elite, the VIVE Pro 2, the VIVE Flow, and then the Mars Cam Track. The Mars Cam Track is a really interesting tool that we developed for content creators as well. Now, you can also think about being an ecosystem partner. Do you want to develop gloves? Do you want to develop trackers? Do you want to develop objects? So we create actual objects and technology on our side that enable the ecosystem of actual accessory partners so that they can do body tracking, so they can do facial tracking, anything that they want to do. So it's really important that you actually think about it's not just headsets or wearables or what you're going to wear on your face. It's also the objects that you want to interact with and the things that you want to work with. So there's a lot of different options out there from an accessory and a peripheral standpoint. I will note, we're a pretty open ecosystem as a company. All of our trackers, well, not all of them, our latest trackers that we've developed work with all of our competitors' headsets as well. So you can develop accessories that interact between innovation and between headsets. Makes it a lot easier for the ecosystem to actually operate and innovate. So a couple of other areas that you can think about that are really important: device management. Again, privacy and security. There's an ecosystem of opportunity to make these products secure and make sure that you're protecting the end user data. If you're doing a K through 12 classroom, you are under very strict guidelines and security for the data and the users and the content that you're using on there. If you're using it in an automotive innovation center, I'm not allowed to bring my phone to the GM Innovation Center. I'm not allowed to bring my computer in there. It's very, very precarious to bring a headset with cameras on it in there. So for those of you that don't know, also the stock exchange does not allow cameras on the stock exchange floor. So to allow an XR headset on there that uses cameras for tracking, you can see the prohibits, that exist. But these are the things that you got to work through. You can think about the ecosystem, the software, the solutions, and all these other pieces. Now, the last piece I want to talk about is this G-Reigns, the P5G. I want to get back to the roots of who HTC was and who we are again today. So we have thought about connectivity and the problem of delivering content since day one, where we were making smartphones. And we said, we're going to make a VR headset, but then how do we make a VR headset or a wearable that everybody will wear when they're walking around? Well, the key component, the killer app, as I call it, but I am a tech nerd that came from the telecommunications industry. We do believe very strongly that that killer enabler is a delivery system and a 5G network, and in the future, a 6G network. So if you're confused about when is 6G versus 5G, in 2030, all the major carriers and mobile networks will be deploying their 6G networks. So globally, so whether they're Orange, Vodafone, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, everybody will be deploying 6G at that point. What we very strongly believe and what we're doing and what this promise of getting to these wearables and getting to these light glasses is you actually have to innovate the technology out of these big clunky wearables into these light glasses. And then how do you do that? You actually have to virtualize hardware, memory, visualization, runtime, tracking technology. We can put that into an edge network and into a cloud environment network, and we can actually deliver that. And that's actually what's going to deliver us these wearables that are become ubiquitous. But it's that enabler. So it's kind of like the train tracks before the train that could go over the Alps, right? So once that network is in place, you will actually have that enablement in there. Things that we're doing today around our 5G technology is we can actually take over 30 users with one small private 5G box, which is smaller than one of those garbage cans, okay? It's on rollers. It's about the size of a carry-on suitcase. One of these boxes can cover 10,000 square meters and 30 users at once. And then now you're delivering at perf, for those content nerds, you're delivering 90 frames per second, and in the future 120 frames per second to 30 simultaneous headsets in something the size of an airplane hangar. And now you have no content on the headsets, no content on the wearables. So now you're meeting security, you're meeting scalability, you're meeting deployment, and it's a very clean signal. So we've gone from 8 years ago of a 5-meter cable and somebody's gaming room or their office, and now we're actually have multiple users running around an entire warehouse where there's no content on their headset being hosted, but it's being streamed to the headset. So where we're going with it now is lighter glasses. It's going to easier wearables. The headset's all going to get lighter. It's all going to get easier to use. The pass-through technology requires that connectivity piece. And what you're going to see probably in the next year or two is something that looks much more like regular glasses, maybe a little bit chunkier, but that will connect to your phone. And then that phone is connected to your network. And we've already designed at this point the ability to take a 5G antenna and put it into the back of a more clunky 5G headset. But we know that's not usable over the long term. We know people want to get to that lighter headset. So where it's going, where we've been and where it's going is basically a wireless enabled headset or wearable. And it's going to be pretty profound and it's going to be pretty amazing. But that's actually how the costs of the headsets come down. That's how the distribution of the content becomes easier. We really actually have to innovate our way to it. So, when I think about the different opportunities, young minds, young innovative minds, I think when I was your age, I was probably got my first shot at being a systems engineer, at KPMG or at Samsung Telecommunications. And, I was working on some pretty early products. And, when I think about where it's going, the kind of companies you want to work with, the brands and the purpose and why they exist, really take that all into consideration and think about, bringing those, innovative strategies and ideas to those companies. So that's it for me. In 2014, we ramped down our smartphone operations. In 2015, just to give you clarity, in 2009, we were at 58 million smartphones and Apple was at 60. Once we kind of pivoted and understood where XR was going and what we were going to do, we kept all of our architecture and radio technology teams, and we disbanded the smartphone business because it was becoming too commoditized. It was just a channel fighting game. The innovation wasn't really there, and this is where the new innovation was. So is the rectangle in your hand going to go away? Yes, but probably give it about 10 years.
Anyone else? Yeah, great talk. In terms of the content for the different environments, like you mentioned some of the military environments, are you guys developing the content for the environments, or are you doing that with partners?
We mostly partner for that kind of stuff. We're really the system integrator. We're the technology company that enables the developers, the content creators, the platform partners, and the end customers to consume it. But, when you think about it, I think we were talking earlier about some of the, solving a real problem, really take that industry knowledge. The stuff that we're doing in the Ukraine, this was developed by, these were all ex-Special Forces operators, door kickers, as they would self-proclaim themselves. They're now all neurological scientists and PhDs and doctors. And they develop PTSD solutions for their fellow, operators, because too many of their friends committed suicide. So they wanted to go solve that problem. And they're the ones that are actually working on that solution. So, and I could just kind of comment on that company. This company called Narova Labs. They're out of Salt Lake City. And what they've actually done with our headset and with our technology and the eye tracking technology is they've been able to do a brain recoupling where you actually have physical damage in the brain, and they can actually force blood flow into damaged areas of your brain. And I've done this exercise myself pretty amazingly. They actually took a non-verbal soldier that his wife and his 3 kids were killed in a massacre in Ukraine. And he was non-verbal for 3 months. And we put him in the headset, we put him in the experience, and he was talking in about 30 seconds. And so what we found, what we could do with that application is we could replicate in 4 sessions of 1-hour sessions, so 4 hours in 1 week was equivalent to 55 hours or 55 clinicians interacting with 1 patient over 80 hours of treatment. So pretty remarkable what we could do with a 1 headset. Other questions? Ethical standards.
And also about thank you. I'm a Fulbright scholar here at UM from Kyrgyzstan. So we also have heard about UM with Elon Musk, about chips and etc. So how ethical is this? Do you have a right to get this data? What about privacy?
Yeah.
What about this data? Are you following ethical standards of medicine and other research using humans as mice or other animals under experiment? Yeah, do you have the right to do this?
So HTC as a company, as a policy, Cher Wang is our CEO. Very proud to say that I work with her. Good Christian lady and very, very smart. Our ethical standards are, our products are built in Taiwan. Our products are more expensive than competitor products. We have our own factory. We pay everybody fair wages. We meet ethical standards of production and quality that really not many people stand up to, the levels that we operate at. We have several ethical certifications for our manufacturing. We are also not a data collector. We don't have a business model, okay, to monetize end user data. We don't have a business model to collect the data. So when there's eye tracking built in, we built the eye tracking into the headset so that we would know where the pupil was looking so that we could shut down the rest of the screen display, and we could then have less bandwidth going back over the network infrastructure so that we could deliver a 90 frames per second piece of content over the network. So we use the technology to enable the best experience. We don't use the end user as a product. There's some companies out there, and I'm not going to talk negatively, their business model is the end user, okay? That's a fact of reality. That's how they make money, good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not critical of that. That's just their business model. Our business model is to create solutions that other companies and other partners will create that they will then go out and hopefully do something very good with it. I could tell you some pretty funny stories, but I remember in 2015, my CEO was like, how are we going to prevent adult content from being built, on this headset? And I was like, once we sell it, I'm not sure we can really stop that kind of stuff. But, as a company, as a brand, as a culture, we do our best, to kind of create those types of products and solutions that we think will benefit humanity, will benefit the classroom, will benefit the engineers. We're not really, you won't see us kind of working on solutions that work counter to end user benefit. I hope that helps.
One more.
In the back, you were first.
So, since your company is involved in so many different aspects in this industry, and I'm assuming y'all didn't have the objective when you were starting out to build it out all this way, how do you keep all of those aspects in mind, and how are you able to establish where resources are supposed to go, and keep your goals in mind since you're spread out across so much of the industry?
You can, as a company and as a brand, you can get really confused really fast. You can. The first year that we actually, in 2015, right about 3 months before we launched, we hired a head of China, who was Alvin Graylin. We hired a head of store, which was Rickard Steiber. We hired a head of studio, which was Joel Breton. A head of Europe, because I was flying 375,000 miles a year, and I couldn't do any more. Paul, God, I'm forgetting his last name, but a wonderful person. Anyway, we actually expanded our business rapidly, very quickly, to go after global markets, and then to also go after a lot of the verticals in enterprise from day one. The consumer side of the business was mostly dominated by subsidized hardware or by Valve, right? But that was the partnership we had with Valve. Valve was the consumer side. HTC was really the enterprise and commercial side. But one of the first headsets I gave out in 2015 to a company was IKEA, because they made this humongous book. And I said, you can stop making this book because we can put it all in a headset. And all of their content that was in that book was actually digital. Not a single one of those images in that book is a photograph. They're all 100% digital. It took them 2 years to create their first demo app because they didn't know what Unreal Engine was. They didn't know what Unity was. They didn't have any game developers inside of their company. And it took probably 2 or 3 years for us to help Lowe's Interactive and, all these other companies actually put game studios inside of their company or get enough talent in the market. So in reality, what we had to do as a company was, in the very beginning, support indie developers. We didn't go writing checks to AAA game studios. There wasn't a big enough embedded base to do that, deploy their game for. I know everybody was like, where is this killer app? Where's this killer app? Reality was, it was in such an innovative state in the early stages of the company, you needed indie developers that were low risk, low investment, small teams that could actually create very, very innovative ideas from day one, and they can create a lot of great experiences. So I think just in general, it really did evolve naturally as developers and content creators became more aware of game engine, content creation, hand interaction, locomotion. Just teaching, in October 2014, we told developers they were going to run content at 90 frames per second. Before that, the maximum that was ever done was probably 30, and they were starting to develop 60 frame per second game displays. So this was a completely new paradigm shift for content creators to create content at 90 frames per second. So just in general, like we've really had to evolve the entire ecosystem from developers, content creators, all the way to peripheral and accessory partners. So I hope that this kind of gives you an idea of how big that ecosystem is and where you can actually play in it and how you can participate in it. Does that help? Yeah? But you can get really confused. Companies can get really confused. It's why you build a why statement. Why does your company exist? Ours was technology, creativity, and humanity. And if it was a project that didn't meet that goal, we didn't invest in it, we didn't do it.